Whitfield, and I'm here to give my talk on, let me just actually share out my screen first, on women's voices in library technology, explored through citation analysis in library publications. I'm Sharon Whitfield, and I'm the Electronic Resources and User Access Librarian at Rider University. So one of the things I always like to talk about is, what motivates me to do my research? And I typically research a lot on gender and library technology. Libraries have a history of gender stratification. Most women librarians know about Dewey's misogyny, but that misogyny went way past Dewey. And most women, in fact, most women in this picture would be known as cheap labor. Thanks, Dewey. Library history is plagued with this hegemony, with men being at the top of library administration and women being at the bottom. And this continues to be the way that libraries continue as a way of checking feminization of library work as a profession. This hegemony continued to dominate librarianship into the 1970s with the second wave of feminism. And when they started to look around and see, well, women aren't leading this profession, you started to see the emergence of organizations such as the American Library Feminist Task Force in 1970, followed by the Committee on the Status of Women in Librarianship in 1976. In addition to those organizations coming up and questioning why women aren't leading this profession, you also started to see legislation such as Title IX come to fruition. And Title IX really was the legislation that helped to advance women in this career path and into library leadership roles. So in 2004, Marta Dierup posted or asked this very important question: is the revolution over? And she surveyed 151 academic library institutions, collected data about gender, funding method, and geographical location. Her findings were that the majority of library chief administrators in academia were women or female. However, even Dierup admitted that most women library leaders had benefited from this Title IX movement, this Title IX legislation. Well, what happens when these women start retiring? Who is going to move into these roles? So I would argue that no, the revolution is definitely not over. In fact, the revolution has just begun. There continues to be this movement to feminize this profession and library work. I mean, we start to see titles such as information scientist, information architect, data analyst, digital asset coordinator. These are all library roles. This is library work. Yet they took the word librarian out of all of these titles. It's almost like it's a dirty word to use the word librarian when you're talking about library work. And we even see this in library science programs. They start to move away from the word library. And there's a really good reason, is because if they start using the word information, there's increase in enrollment. But if they use library, the programs start to stagnate, the enrollment starts to stagnate or even decline. Utilizing University of Pittsburgh 2017 stats, we do see that men are getting attracted to information science programs. So this defeminization is working. We see 274 men to 151 women. It's a lot more men than women. And then if we look at their library information science enrollment, we see 5 men to 18 women. There's also a devaluing that's happening of traditional library services with more library technology. And that devaluing of those traditional library services really results in lower paying positions that are traditionally women librarian positions. And we're also seeing men occupying higher paying positions in library tech positions. So as libraries begin to adopt technology, it becomes evident that library technology departments are masculine enclaves. There's not a whole lot of data on gender in library technology, so I do apologize for some outdated data. But in 2001, men held 37% of librarian positions, according to the American Research Libraries Association. Libraries, and that's libraries overall. However, they held 66% of system department head positions. And upon graduating, men fill 56% of library technology positions, while only making up 21.5% of graduates from library science schools. Male technology librarians also achieve higher placement salaries than their female counterparts by 21%. So, going hand in hand, why do I perform this research? One of the things that really, started to propel my interest in gender and library technology is, you saw a post by Roy Tennant who talked about this idea of recruiting and supporting women who are interested in library technology and a tech career. And he even said, do they care to survive the cultural gauntlet to make it? And he said, we can help change this. Now, Roy Tennant got a lot of comments about that post because most women who are in library technology, were like, can you really understand that cultural gauntlet? And then we saw an emergence again in 2014, the Library Information Technology Association, which is now part of ALA Core. They sponsored a panel about challenges of gender issues in technology librarianship. And that panel really explored, how gender shapes the professional experience of a library. And one of the things that really resonated for me is during the panel, Andromeda Yelton, who is known for her AI research, she talked about the fact that she was the only woman in her library tech department. And that was relatable because I've been involved with library technology for over 16 years, and I'm often the only woman in my area. In 2016, Lita founded a Women in Information Technology distribution list. It's still running. So if you're interested in these types of issues, please sign up for it. And in 2017, they started their inaugural Avram Camp, which began exploring issues of imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're a fraud. Again, these are all things to try to help women survive that cultural gauntlet that Roy Tennant spoke of. But what exactly is this cultural gauntlet? There's not a lot of literature or scholarship on the cultural gauntlet in library technology, but there is a lot of literature regarding the cultural gauntlet of women in information technology. And since there is very much a mirror between the two professions, we can surmise that women in library technology face the same type of cultural gauntlet. There's occupational culture. There's this idea that, I'm going to go to the man because he knows more. There's an organizational climate issue. There's work-family balance. Imagine when you are the primary care provider and you're on call 24/7 or answering emails 24/7, which a lot of us library tech workers do. There also, for my own research, I can tell you that the issue of pregnancy comes into play because a lot of people, when they go on their maternity leave, or they feel like out of touch with the technology at that point. Bias and discrimination that happens both at a patron level and also happens within the departmental level. And then burnout. That's always a big issue for women in tech careers. So during my research on gender and library technology, I came across Lamont's study in 2009, that occurred in 2009. And it's a great study, it really is. And here's why. It explores gender and library computer system department heads. It looks at first author citation analysis of 2006-2007 library technology articles and from the following publications. And then it also looks at first author citation analysis of 2006-2007 library articles that were not focused on tech. And these were Lamont's findings. Overwhelmingly, we see that the department heads are men. In computer system department heads, they're men, and by a lot. And we see that throughout the years. And just when you think it might get better, it gets a little worse. So that's an interesting finding to me. And then the other thing that we see is that there are a lot more male first authors than female authors in library technology journals. With the exception of computer and libraries, that's overwhelmingly the case. However, when we look at non-technology journals, we overwhelmingly see that the first authors for those articles are female authors. So the reasons I wanted to replicate this study, because I thought it was so interesting when I saw it, it's really putting my thoughts down on paper, is one, the study happened over 12 years ago. And the other thing, she only looked at 1 year of journal publications. Maybe that was an off year for women technology librarians. And the other thing is it only focused on gender. It didn't really explore what women were writing about regarding library technology. So I wanted to replicate it and go even further than what Lamont's study created. So the purpose of my research is really to explore gender disparity within the disciplines of library technology and utilize current publications to perform a thematic text analysis of the library technology journal article abstracts to identify gender gaps in authorship within certain library technology disciplines. And here are the research questions that guided my research. How has the percentage of women first authors publishing library technology journals increased or decreased since Lamont's 2009 article? What is the relationship between first authors, gender, and library technology disciplines in library technology publications between 2018 and 2020? What technology themes demonstrated gender disparity in library technology publications between 2018 and 2020? So here are my methods of data collection as I collected over 624 article records from the following journals: Code for Lib, which was used to replace dlib, which is no longer publishing. Code for Lib is an open access publication. It has no APC and is reviewed by an editorial committee. Information Technology and Libraries is an ALA core journal. It is also peer reviewed. And then Library High Tech, which is an Emerald publication, which is peer reviewed. And then the Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology, which again I believe it's a Wiley journal and is peer reviewed. I looked at articles between 2018 and 2020, so about a 3-year span. And my data set consisted of the following information: year published, first author, source, and abstract. In addition to collecting that data set, I also had to be able to collect gender. And this was self-identified gender of the particular author. And in order to find someone's self-identified gender, I had to look at publication notes, author-affiliated library websites, authors' personal websites, or direct communication from the author. I really wanted to see what pronouns the particular author was using. What was their self-identified gender? There were instances where gender identity could not be established, or there was insufficient evidence of the gender. Or the other issue was that I ran into is that there were some articles that just were completely unrelated to library science. And so a total of 40 citations were not thematically analyzed. So here's a sneak peek. I always like to show like what the data looks like in the background. So this is what my data looks like. I did do a very old school data collection methods. There are much better methods that you can use, but I did like to go the old school because I really got to know the data well. So here is my analysis, my thematic analysis of the citation. So then my first cycle coding really used a descriptive coding of the abstract. I looked for repetition as a way to identify topics that the article's abstract was about. I then used Voyant, which is a text analysis tool, to have Voyant look at the frequency of words within the corpus of the abstract. My second cycle coding, in order to narrow down the description, was to apply Library of Congress subject headings. And then after the second cycle coding, I really looked at the top 10 for each gender. So for my findings, my first research question, just as a reminder, is how has the percentage of women first authors publishing in library technology journals increased since Lamont's article? Well, it's really interesting because and I'm starting out with Code for Lib, which I know Lamont did not look at. But we're still, you know, for Code for Lib, we're still seeing a lot of men writing about library technology overwhelmingly than women. And then also we are seeing in information technology libraries, which is an ALA core journal, we are seeing more women write about library technology than men. So that's great to see. Library high tech, again, it's almost it's very similar, where we're seeing 51% of women writing about library technology as a first author, and 48% of men. The Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology, just like Code for Lib, we are seeing more men write about library technology in that journal than women. So just to kind of explore the changes that are occurring, apologies. We are seeing a significant change with information technology in libraries. We're seeing that 27.29% more women are being published in this library journal. That's great. You know, we are seeing an increase with the Journal of Association for or JAST, I should just say. We are seeing an increase of women writing for JAST too. I mean, all together, we are seeing more women writing about library technology. So this is fantastic news. I did kind of compare DLib and Code for Lib just to see what what kind of difference I would see. And you know, the difference is a little bit. There's a 3% decrease in men and a little increase in women. And you know, the nice thing is we're seeing more people identifying as gender neutral, and so that's also great to see in the study too. My second research question is, what is the relationship between first author's gender and library technology disciplines in library technology publications between 2018 and 2020? And this is the top 10 themes of women authors in library technology articles. These are, again, first authors. Bibliometrics, there are 28 articles that were associated with the theme bibliometrics. Information organization, which is cataloging, metadata, searching behavior. There were 16 articles about that particular theme. Social media, digital libraries, information literacy, which had 10 articles written about that theme. There was a significant amount of articles about Internet of Things, particularly that women were writing about. There was an entire entire issue completely devoted to Internet of Things. So it was really good to see a lot of women writing about that. Then barrier-free design, maker spaces, data protection, and application software. So what are the 10 themes of men? And I realize this is more than 10, but there were some that were tied. Again, we're seeing men also writing a lot about bibliometrics, social media, information organization, barrier-free design, and we're seeing data mining, digital libraries, application software, which is actually development, in library technology, information storage and retrieval systems, which is talking more about algorithms, semantic web, data protection, scripting languages, intellectual cooperation, and then also searching behavior. So my third question was what technology themes demonstrate gender disparity in library technology publications between 2018 and 2020? So here is where we're really seeing a gender disparity. And by saying significantly publish more articles in this theme, I'm talking about they wrote more than 50% more articles than the other gender. So men are significantly publishing more articles than women on computer social aspects, consumer behavior. One that really stood out to me is the fact that there was only one article with a woman being a first author about data mining. And so that, you know, they're significantly writing more about those particular themes, while women are writing more about consumerism and digital preservation, educational technologies, information literacy, Internet of Things, makerspace, management, open source data, psychology, and searching behavior. So there were a lot of gender disparity between those themes. So there are a number of themes where a certain gender is also absent. So in the case information visualization, men are not writing about information visualization in library technology journals. They're not writing about intellectual property or maker spaces, management, publishing, or user-centered design. And then when we look to see what themes women's voices are absent, we're seeing that in big data and information resources, which is essentially they're writing about a particular electronic resource. They're also not writing about machine learning or medicine data processing, social media influence, or standards. And that standards one really jumps out at me, being someone who is affiliated with NISO. You know, what does that mean if we're not writing about the standards? So here's what I kind of am framing the discussion of my research about. The discussion helps me to really take a look at or shed some light on what my findings are showing, and helps me to gain a new understanding of these findings. So these are kind of the discussions that I want to really highlight on. So how does gender in the library profession compare to gender of first authors in library technology articles? And I'll actually talk about more of these while we're going through the discussion aspect. So how does gender in the library profession compare to the gender of first authors in library technology articles? Well, according to 2019 Department of Labor Statistics, women as librarians are 81% of librarians are women or identify as women. 19% of librarians identify as men. That's pretty significant. But then when we look at first authors of library technology articles, we see that only four out of every 10 articles are being written by women. Now, that's a significant jump when men only make up 20% of our profession, but they make up 60% of first authors in library technology articles. Now, Lamont's study was in 2009, and she reported that only 35% of library articles had women as first authors. Well, I'm happy to report that my findings for articles between 2018 and 2020 is now 42%. So in 12 years, we've seen a 7% increase. Baby steps, but we're making progress. So why are women's voices absent in certain library technology themes? That's really the next thing that I'd like to shed light on. And these are the themes that women's voices are not there. We're not hearing anything from them as first authors. They're not talking about these themes. And one thing that jumps out to me is that these are, particularly big data, machine learning, these are more emergent fields of library technology. They also require a lot more in-depth understanding of programming. Big data often asks you to have an understanding of the R programming language, APIs, Python. Machine learning, again, it's asking for development of algorithms. Again, Python and C++, things that require programming knowledge. And women are just not writing about that, or at least they're not first authors in those publications. But when we do start to look at the areas that women are writing about, we're seeing more of a public service focus, more public service technologies. And as examples, we're seeing information literacy technologies being discussed, maker spaces, educational technologies, digital preservation. Again, these are more public service oriented technologies. Rather than the emerging technologies that men aren't seem to be writing about. And so, to me, this is indicating that there are, certain themes that there are definitely enclaves for men. Women are not getting into those particular themes. They're not entering them. And so why, what are some of the reasons for the gender disparity in first authors and themes in library technology articles? Well, this goes back to that cultural gauntlet that women face. There's a lack of mentors for women in library technology. Women who are interested in program often can't find somebody to connect with to kind of help them to progress or write about programming, get interested in programming. In fact, a lot of times women in library technology, they often become relegated to more public services technologies, training, or documentation. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's great that we are, but there's a larger impact when women aren't part of the actual technology development or part of the discussion in these emerging themes for library technology. Again, we see an organizational climate issue, work-family balance issue, bias and discrimination, and then burnout. That are possible reasons for why we're not seeing women as first authors and of these themes in library technology articles. So that leaves me with this discussion, which is how can we as library professionals prevent gender disparity within the profession? And I'm kind of curious to hear from you on this. How can we, what can we do to really help to prevent gender disparity within this profession, get more women involved in library technology? So I would love to hear what you have to say about that. Let me see if I can get that chat to come up, because I would love to hear from you. What do you think might be something that we could do in order to prevent gender disparity within the profession? How can we help women become become first authors in these library technology journals? What do you all think? Well, while you're all just kind of thinking about that, here are my references, and I'm also open to answering any questions that you have regarding my research or about the role about library gender and library technology research that I've done before. Does anyone have any thoughts about, were you surprised by these findings? Do you think it's great to see that we're at least making progress, more women are writing about library technology? Or are you a little disappointed to see that, it's only increased 7% in the last 12 years? So Alex says, I would love to see more technology-focused courses offered during master's program or cross-listed tech courses with the IT department. Alex, I think that would really help. I think that you know, one of the benefits that you have if you have that cross-listing of those tech courses is that, yeah, it is preparing librarians for those technology roles. And I think, you know, it would be good to see more of that too. I agree. Anybody else? Well, I'm not getting any questions and I'm not seeing any comments, but I would love to thank you so much for allowing me to present my research today. And I hope that, you know, one of the reasons why I love to explore this is because, you know, I think one of my feeling is that we always have to have a check on our own profession because our profession is delivering information. And it's something that we want to make sure that anyone can gain access to that information. We want to provide resources that don't consider gender and you know, I shouldn't say it that way, let me take that back, that, you know, that are developed for any gender to find that information. So I really do hope that that you'll continue to take a look at this profession, continue to look to see, you know, is there something going on in here? So Brittany said, I'm curious what the credentials of library tech support are generally. Yeah, that's a great question. So it really runs the gamut between computer science. Is it computer science or library information tech science? So now, Brittany, I haven't done a hard study on that. And I can't say that I've seen a lot of statistics on that. I can tell you my personal experience, which is that most of the time when you come into library technology, you probably have some kind of computer science background, or you at least have some kind of information technology background. In my case, I have a strong programming background. I have a strong computer science minor. And then I also worked in information technology for about 8 years. So, you know, I am coming in it from that aspect. But a lot of times, I've seen a lot of my male colleagues, they had no computer science experience. They actually came into it with an interest. They had a mentor to help them facilitate that interest. So, you know, I think that, you know, if we have more mentorship for women, I think that you would also see more women in those library tech areas. But I think that, you know, I think it's both. I think some people come with a background of computer science and some people come with a background of library information science, and some people come with both. So you know, it's tough to say without doing the research, but in my experience has been there's at least that interest in computer science to kind of be part of the library technology. Are there any other questions or thoughts about the presentation?
Well, I'm the dean of the school, so you know, it's very interesting from our perspective, the educator's perspective. And Elizabeth Hoffman is one of our regional directors, and kind of we have been thinking, you know, what we should do, not only for the tech kind of aspect, but all the aspect kind of emerging kind of areas, what we should do, you know, how we should facilitate. Do I have answer? No. You know, and then I'm glad you Sharon had you know, deep understanding and kind of trained as a kind of computer science or information science. I'm from political science. I got master's even in diplomatic history, but then I kind of got interested in originally in library science only. I'm from Korea, my personal story. And I really got disappointed with the services at the libraries in Korea. And I moved here to study library science. And my dream was to change the libraries in Korea. But I stay here. But that was, 1995 when the internet just started to the public. So I got interested in, I taught myself a couple of things, and then I taught like a PHP, MySQL, but not that kind of software engineering level. So I believe, regardless of gender, anybody can get into that field. But how? I mean, how should we encourage the students? We try to offer, several kind of, tech related courses, but those courses suffer at a kind of low enrollment. So there's a reality check. We have about 400 students. If we offer like a coding class, I don't know, maybe 10 students, at the beginning. But that would be a good start. But how can we encourage them to consider those areas? That's a kind of tough kind of dilemma for us. So what do you think? I mean, Sharon or other people in this room?
So I will say, at least for so we have a very similar story actually, because my degree is in poli-sci as well. And I went into to library science because I did not like the way that American libraries were. And this was back when it was the card catalog. It was just like I would go into the library and I would hate the entire environment, the entire process. And I wanted to make information much more accessible. And the internet surely helped with that. And I will say I never went to the university thinking that I would ever be interested in computer science. My father kind of always said to me, oh, well, you really like, I was back with DOS with computing. So my dad used to say, well, you have a really, keen interest in computing. Maybe you should go into computer science. And I kind of pushed back on him and said, no, it's not for me. And then I just took a few courses, and I shouldn't even say courses, they were workshops. They weren't credited, but they sparked my interest. And I think that that's really what it's all about, is sparking that interest, and then having somebody that really will help you with to make sure that that interest kind of comes to fruition and develops even more. I think that that's what's really helped me. And the other thing too is engaging with other people in that area, in that field. You always want to feel like you're not alone. And particularly a woman who's in library technology and often being the only one. It's nice to have a group that, I can talk with. And they also will help me and mentor me through. So it's great to see that. How about anybody else? What does everybody else think? But I can see why credit courses, you may not get a lot of people signing up for them, because I think a lot of people feel that programming would be really daunting. And I think that, that's why almost starting out at a workshop level is almost it's preferred, because it sparks that interest without having that feeling like, oof, my grade depends on this, or my GPA might go down because of this. And I think that you can also ask a lot of more questions when you don't feel like your grade is dependent upon it. Well, thank you so much for having me talk. I love my research area. If anybody has any questions or is interested in gender and library technology issues, please reach out. I hate to say that I'm not only somebody who's involved with, I'm involved with library technology as a woman, but I'm also the chair of the ALA core women in information technology group. And 2 years ago, I ran the Avram camp. So I'm very active with gender issues and library technology. So if you would love to reach out to me, I would be happy to answer any questions you have or help you to also survive that cultural gauntlet that you might experience if you go into library technology. But I want to leave this talk by saying, we need to see more women in library technology. We need to see more diversity in library technology. So I hope that, this presentation won't be, oh, I'll never make it in library technology. I think that the more diversity we have in that area, the more that we're just going to get better. I think that, the fact that I went into to help get information more accessible. I think that, to me, this is going to be, if we have more diversity in this area, that information is going to be more accessible. If you haven't read Algorithms of Oppression, you see what happens when there's not a diversity, when there is, development in information search and information software. So, I want to see more women. I want to see more diversity in library technology. So please think about entering it. Thank you again for allowing me to present my research. I hope it fascinated you like it fascinates me. And I hope that, that when I do this research again, that we're going to see a much more equity in first authors in library technology. Thank you so much.